Jay wants to know, JD wants to know, is there a good or better best time to take probiotics? Okay, yes, in my opinion, the best time is at night. Okay, why at night? Because when you take the probiotic at night, you give that supplemental all night to get in your GI tract and to colonize your GI tract. So as opposed to, let's say it's the course of the day, that probiotic doesn't have to compete with your food or any other supplements that you might be taking. And so at night is ideal. That's best. Outside of that, there's not really a good better. It's really any time of the day is fine, but best is at night. 80 wants to know symptoms of mold exposure. That's a little off topic, 80, but what I'm going to do is I want to refer you back to a video series I did on mold toxicity. And the reason why is the answer to that question is a really big question. And this is a 4-part series, and it goes very, very in depth on mold toxicity. So I want to refer you to that video series. If you're not subscribed, then make sure you subscribe. That way you get our video updates on a regular basis. But you can subscribe to Dr. Osborne on YouTube. And the way you do that is you go to youtube.com/glutenology. And you could make sure you hit that subscribe button. And then there's a little bell icon. Hit that little bell icon, because that little icon will tell them to send you notifications when we have new videos up. But you can type in mold toxicity on my channel, and you'll be able to pull that archived video up. Dr. Steven wants to know, quinoa, high in oxalates or medium? No, very high. Quinoa is a big no-no, and this is why so many people, they're on a gluten-free diet, and they're using quinoa in mass, kind of as a grain-based substitute, right? They're substituting quinoa instead, and they're wrecking themselves. Aside from the fact that there have been a couple of studies that show that some of the proteins in quinoa mimic gluten, quinoa is very high in oxalate. Let's see, is blanched almond flour lower in oxalate? Yes, it is. Sharon wants to know, I have a skin rash that just won't go away. Was recently tested for lupus. Was negative. Okay, I didn't see a question in that. Maybe I just read it. So skin rash that won't go away, tested for lupus, negative. If Sharon, if you're not on the no grain, no pain diet plan, that'd be a really great place to start. You might find some really fantastic progression in the reduction of skin inflammation as a result of following that diet. Let's see here. So Linda says, garlic is said to be like an antibiotic. I put 1 clove of raw in my fresh salads every night. Am I doing harm? I think that's a relative question, Linda. I don't necessarily think that you're doing harm. I mean, garlic has antibiotic properties, but it's not like taking amoxicillin or Cipro. It's food, and there are certainly antibiotic properties to it. I would say that depends. Are you doing harm? It depends on how you're feeling. It depends on how you're doing. You might be doing harm if you're not improving, if you're not healthy, if you're really struggling in your health. That could potentially be, part of the problem. But it's really individually independent. So I wouldn't necessarily just demonize garlic. Some people don't do well with garlic because it's a higher in FODMAP, which is a carbohydrate-based element that can be very hard to digest. So there are a number of reasons why a person might not do well with garlic, but whether or not you're doing harm, it's really an individual and unique question. Does cooking foods high in oxalate lower the levels? Yeah, so that's a good question, Jane. So yeah, when you cook or you steam your spinach down really, really well, you will lower the oxalate content. And so that's one thing that you definitely can do, is you can cook those higher oxalate foods down. But even doing that, I still see some people with oxalate toxicity issues still struggle even doing that. But that's certainly something you can try to do. Okay, so let's see. Linda, thank you for noticing. So we got a new toy, right? So we got our new smart board, which just helps me, present to you the information a little bit clearer without the visual disturbance of the old whiteboard that we were using. So super glad you noticed, Linda. Thanks for noticing. Always trying to up our game for you. Okay. Just wonder, so Pearlie wants to know, hi, Dr. Osborne, just wondering if gluten can give a person eye problems. I know it's off topic, but could you do a video on gluten in the eyes? I can, and we'll put that in our queue. Pearlie, thanks for asking the question. The simple answer is yes, gluten can impact and affect eye health. I've actually seen people who went on a gluten-free diet and within months went backwards in their glasses, in their prescription. So like their vision actually started to improve as a result of getting the gluten out of their diet. So definitely, I've seen that both clinically, anecdotally, but also seen studies in the literature. You have to remember that a number of properties, not just gluten, but a number of properties of grain can actually wreak havoc on the eye. Let's see here. Keep getting spontaneous benign. Well, so if you're getting benign subepithelial oral mucosal blisters, wow, that's filled with blood. It's probably what you're eating. As if they're happening in the mouth. If you're getting blood-filled blisters in your mouth, there's something you're being exposed to or something that you're doing either within your diet or within your toothbrush, toothpaste, or some other kind of allergen you're being exposed to that's most likely contributing to the formation of those blisters. I would want to get with a good functional medicine doc and do a full gamut of testing around that, see what it is you might be being exposed to that could be causing that. Mary wants to know, can an oxalate cause issues with muscles in your legs, heaviness and soreness? Yes, it can. Absolutely. It can cause muscle weakness, muscle heaviness, and persistent muscle soreness. So yes, very good question. I love hearing that. So Buddha Babe says, I've been gluten-free for 30 years, but going low oxalate changed my life. Yeah, so just confirmation for many of you that may already be gluten-free that aren't quite sure whether or not potentially oxalate reduction might be beneficial for you. Gene wants to know, should I be concerned if I was able to take 1,200 grams of detox C in one day with no bowel problems? Am I fighting something off that I don't know about? I'm not quite sure I understand that question. I think if you're taking 1,200 milligrams or 1,200, you wouldn't be taking 1,200 grams, I hope. I hope you'd be taking 1,200 milligrams, 1,200 grams. That would create a heck of a diarrhea storm. But 1,200 milligrams, which is 1.2 grams, should be very easily tolerable in a vitamin C powder. Again, unless you have a major oxalate issue. The people that have high levels of oxalate toxicity, at least in my experience, generally don't tolerate vitamin C very well at all. All right, PJ says, just received your DNA test kit, gearing up for some answers after many baffling years and too many guesses. Love it, PJ. Hope that helps shed some light on the gluten issue for you. Let's see, Angeline, what is an acute oxalate nephropathy and what are the symptoms? So nephropathy is kidney damage. So remember, oxalates are crystals. And so when your kidneys are trying to filter them out into your urine, an acute nephrotoxic event would be a massive amount of damage to your kidney. You might have blood in your urine as one of the potential symptoms. You might have severe pain on urination. You might have really cloudy urine. If a doctor runs a test, you might have an elevation in specific gravity. So, those can all be potential symptoms. But running some blood tests as well might be helpful. So your doctor can measure your glomerular filtration rate, your GFR, your blood urea nitrogen. You can also have some other kidney parameters done if those come back negative, but you still suspect a kidney problem. There's albumin and microalbumin tests that can be looked at. So there's a number of different kidney function marker tests that can be measured. Creatinine is another one that's very commonly run in your blood. Yeah, somebody's mentioning peanut butter. Yeah, again, peanut butter is a high oxalate food. So it's not that, again, that it by itself is going to cause kidney stones, but it certainly can contribute through its high oxalate content. Do oxalates cause thyroid nodules? Not in my experience, they don't. But that doesn't mean that they can't potentially create a problem for your thyroid gland. Remember, oxalates are an equal opportunity tissue destroyer, just like gluten. They can damage any tissue in the body. It doesn't have to be just limited to your joints or to your bladder. Let's see. So Linda says, Dr. O says, don't kid yourself. Listen, I was grain-free for a year, still splurged on milk, chocolate, and coconut sugar. I've stopped those plus tomatoes, potatoes, legumes. My pain level dropped immediately. Love it. Thank you for sharing your experience, Linda. Don't kid yourself. Look, remember there's 3 rules to eating. If we really want to look at kind of the primary rules to eating that you should live by. And the rule number 1 is you can't get health eating food that isn't healthy. So if the food, if you know, like for example, chocolate with sugar in it, healthy or not, I mean, the sugar in and of itself, processed sugar is not good for you. So that's a no-brainer. So don't lie to yourself. Like if you lie to yourself, you're going to struggle. And a lot of people lie to themselves because they don't want to give a food up. Like they're just not ready for that, maybe psychologically, maybe emotionally. But remember that all progress begins with the brutal truth. And that means the brutal truth to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. So rule number 1, you can't get healthy eating food that is not healthy. Number 2, rule number 2 is listen. Listen what? Listen to your body. Your body is going to talk to you. And sometimes your body talks to you with pain, right? The symptoms, doctors love to label symptoms disease. And then they love to give you a pill to artificially manipulate your chemistry to reduce your symptoms in the name of compassion, right? I want you to not have pain, so here, take this pill. To me, that's pseudo-compassion. It's false compassion because it begins the story with a lie. The real truth is, why do you hurt? So listen to your body. If every time you eat a food or every time you eat a conglomeration of things and it causes you grief or strife or exacerbates your medical condition or your disease or your symptoms, then listen, pay attention, right? So that's rule number 2. And rule number 3 is don't eat what you're allergic to. And to know that, there's 2 ways. One is to listen to your body, right? Don't eat food you're allergic to. And one of the ways you know what you're allergic to is by listening to your body. But sometimes when you listen to your body, you do a kind of a diet where you write down everything that you eat, a symptom log next to that. Sometimes you don't pick up on some of the more subtle allergies. There's something called a delayed hypersensitivity, which is, the window of reaction can be as quickly as 3 hours, but as delayed as 3 weeks. And so if you have a delayed response, sometimes it's hard to listen to your body if you're reacting to something that you consumed a few weeks ago. So sometimes this step number 3, it's best if you test for delayed response. And this is where when you're struggling at home, maybe you've done everything you know to do, maybe you're following everything you know health-wise, but you're still struggling. This is when you jump off of the DIY wagon. You know what that means. DIY means do it yourself. Sometimes you can save a lot of grief, a lot of time, a lot of stress, a lot of money by asking an expert, somebody who's qualified, somebody who's well-versed in functional medicine, and they can help you. They can help you do these types of things so that you can get more meaningful answers more quickly. Okay. So another question coming in. How to ease the pain in stomach. So that's kind of a broad question. I mean, Rosalind, it just depends. It depends on what's causing the pain in the stomach. I'd say as a very generalized, very generic answer, step 1 would be get a copy of No Grain, No Pain and follow phase 1 and phase 2 diets for 30 days. If you don't notice a dramatic improvement in your stomach after doing that, follow up with a really qualified functional medicine trained doc. Many of you may not even realize, but I practice regularly. I see clients 3 days a week, and the reason why I do that, I'll never quit practicing because I think doctors lose their relevancy when they quit practicing, when they go off to just kind of be in the world of academia. I think a big part of their relevancy and their experience starts to deteriorate and go away very quickly. So a practicing doctor who isn't guessing, who knows how to do the right kind of testing, who's trained in functional medicine, would be, in my opinion, would be one of the best things that you can do when you're still struggling. We got some folks asking if we can send the list. I guess you're referring to the list of the different foods. So here's one of the things that you should be aware of. So if you go to glutenfreesociety.org, let me put that link up for you. Glutenfreesociety.org On that website, there's a blog, and anytime I do a show, anytime I talk about an in-depth, detailed topic for you, you should know that we have those graphics and that information all there for you, free of charge. It's all there. It's all up on glutenfreesociety.org. One of the reasons why you should be subscribing, if you're not already, to glutenfreesociety.org's free newsletter that comes out a couple of times a week is so that you can get access to this information when we publish new things. And that way you can stay abreast of all things health and wellness wise as it relates not just to the gluten-free diet, but as a general rule of thumb, our mission is to help people with autoimmune disease and autoimmune struggles find real solutions and real answers. So all those graphics and all the things that you see me use are available to you at no charge. Remember, we're trying to save 100 million lives, so we want to make those things available, but you need to go and subscribe so that you're getting that information mailed to your inbox. Okay. Can you give your thoughts on oxalate dumping when you quickly lower eating them and when you have an issue with stored oxalates in tissues and bones? Yeah, so good question, Kelly. I'm glad you asked. So those of you that don't know, when you just completely go oxalate, low oxalate, or oxalate free, one of the things that can happen is you feel better for a week, maybe even 2 weeks, and then your body's tissue starts to dump oxalate rapidly. And so then you start declining, you start feeling worse. And so this goes back to what I was talking about a minute ago. It's one of the reasons why I put this up there. Oxalate dumping is a very real phenomenon. And so what can you do to try to help minimize some of the symptoms associated with oxalate dumping is you can use some of these general supplements to kind of help mitigate that transition. But the other thing that you can do, so we're talking about oxalate dumping, right? One of the other things that you can do is taper, instead of just going total oxalate free, taper into a low or reduced oxalate diet. Don't just quit everything cold turkey, but kind of work your way down slowly over the course of a few weeks and kind of let your body taper down and tap into kind of excreting some of the stored oxalates so that you're not just creating a oxalate dumping scenario. So taper it down would be good advice. Let's see here. Rosalind says, I was grain-free for 2 years, but I still have a lot of pain at night. Is potato bad? Well, potatoes high in oxalate and can be one of the reasons why you're still struggling. If you read No Grain, No Pain, including white potatoes, if you read No Grain, No Pain, that's one of the reasons why that food is off the list. There's actually a couple of reasons why. One is its high toxicity level of oxalate, and number two is that potato has a compound called solenoid, which is part of the nightshade family, and so the solenoids, plant-based compounds that also are known to create inflammatory pain in individuals as well. So but for that reason, if you're grain-free still struggling, potato might be something that's also contributing, but again, for more reasons than just oxalate. Do enzyme supplements help break down oxalate? No. No, enzymes don't really do much for oxalate. At least I haven't seen any literature on it, and I haven't seen any clinical evidence experience-wise that would help me believe that happens. Again, going back to, I didn't add would be a probiotic on this list. If you really want to improve your body's ability to tolerate oxalate, one of the things that you can do is take a good probiotic, especially a high doses of lactobacillus. Now, currently you can't get a probiotic that contains oxalobacter, which is one of the types of bacteria that we know can help in the metabolism and breakdown of oxalate. That's not commercially available. It's being studied right now in different research trials. It probably will be commercially available in coming years, but don't hold your breath and wait for that. You can start with a probiotic that has high levels of lactobacillus, and if you want to be effective, I wouldn't do anything really, probably less than at least 50 billion colony-forming units, CFU. That's the dose delineation for probiotics is called a CFU, or a colony-forming unit. So I get a lot of those over-the-counter probiotics that you buy. They're like 10 billion. In some cases, they're in the millions, right? You really got to get upwards of 50 billion for it to be any kind of effective at all. So Mary says, I bake with a lot of almond flour and eat a lot of snap peas. I eat a lot of things on the list. That doesn't mean you can't continue to do that. Again, go back to what I said tonight when we started this conversation, is that just because I'm talking about oxalate, look, if your health is solid, if you're feeling really good, if you're following no grain, no pain, that doesn't mean you need to also jump on a low oxalate bandwagon. It's just that many of you do everything right, or what you think is right, and you're still struggling. And I wanted to give you some insight into how oxalate might be one of those reasons that you still struggle. And so again, it's not a kind of a full-on recommendation that everybody in the world goes on a low oxalate diet. I personally have a one salad a day rule. I don't eat more than one serving of greens in the course of a day. I know a lot of people are like, well, you need to have lots of greens. No, for me, I don't do well. My joints gum up. I don't perform as well. I don't have the energy. I don't have the brain capacity that I would otherwise have. So if I overconsume greens, I'm not oxalate toxic, but I think I'm a little sensitive to too many oxalates at the same time. So I feel much better when I don't overconsume on the greens. I know some people have the opposite experience of that. They process oxalates very, very well. Again, it's biochemical uniqueness. What is your biochemical blueprint, so to speak? Not one size rules fit all. So you got to keep that in mind. Let's see here. I can handle most, okay, not a question. How can you tell if your supplements have oxalates? Generally, they're not going to have oxalates, because in the process of creating vitamins and minerals, there aren't oxalates inherently in those things. If we're talking about just general supplement like multivitamin, B vitamin complex, mineral supplements, that kind of thing. Where you might run into trouble with oxalates are certain plant-based types of supplements, heavy doses of turmeric, for example. And so that's where you'd want to be cautious about oxalate as a potential. So it's going to be more in your plant-based herbals. It's going to be more in your plant-based vitamins, or your whole food source-based vitamins, where they use foods as a source of the vitamin. And if you're oxalate sensitive, then that's where you might find some of those things. But in just generalized purified vitamins and minerals, not really an issue. Yeah, so Anne wants to know, avocados on both lists. It's because if an avocado is ripe versus an avocado not being ripe, the more ripe an avocado becomes, the lower oxalate content, because oxalates are breaking down. So you got to remember, it provides some of the central structure for avocado. And so as it ripens, those compounds break down, which is good, right? This is one of the reasons why we cook food, is it helps break down difficult to digest compounds. Well, ripening is a part. You don't want to eat a bunch of fruits or vegetables that aren't quite ready to be eaten yet, right? That generally means they're going to contain a lot more concentrated versions of certain plant compounds, because they're still trying to grow and they're still trying to protect themselves as they're growing, which means they may have higher concentrations of those things. Okay, let's see, keep going down that. So Sarah says, back it up just one fuzz. There we go. Sarah says, carnivore diet seems to agree with me. Even eating lettuce seems to slow down my entire system for 5 or 6 days. I think it's a fiber issue and not oxalate. Fruit seems to be okay. Yeah, that can be true too. And that's why I wanted to bring that up. Is that carnivore may seem to, so not necessarily carnivore, because if you're eating fruit, that's technically not carnivore, but just eating less vegetables as a whole. Remember, vegetables for some people can be more challenging to digest. As a rule of thumb, fruits have digestive enzymes in them. So if you ever, bit into a mango, if you've ever bitten into like a really good ripe pineapple, if you ever bit into like a really good peach, they almost dissolve in your mouth, right? And why is that? Because they have their own digestive enzymes in them that help you to digest them. So they come kind of ready to eat, so to speak. But many vegetables are really challenging to digest, which is why we cook them. It's why we steam them until they're soft, because they're harder to digest and they don't have an array or a battery of enzymes that kind of help you break them down intrinsically. So what you may be finding there, Sarah, is that certain fruits that digest themselves or help to digest themselves, that's why you tolerate them well, where you don't tolerate vegetables as well. Let's see here. Can drinking a teaspoon of baking soda help with oxalate foods? It can. And taking a calcium magnesium supplement can help with oxalate foods as well. What I would caution you about with baking soda is some brands of baking soda contain corn filler. So you might be getting some corn gluten, getting glutened in that regard. So you've got to make sure that you are careful in that. Let's see. So I can't know if I don't know if I'm going to pronounce your name right or wrong. Duthatha says, I can't afford no grain, no pain copy. Duthatha, go to the library. It's in every major library in the United States. You can check a copy out. It doesn't cost you a cent. It's free. You can also go to glutenfreesociety.org and subscribe and start getting the information that you need to start making meaningful changes. Money should not be an obstacle for any of you tuning in. You know my mission, and you know where my heart is. My heart is in helping people, and that's why I do this show every Monday for you, and that's why we have so many free resources that cost an incredible amount of time and money and resources. It cost me that, but we do that as a public service. So, money should not be an obstacle for you. The answers are there and the information is there. So get on over to the library and get you a copy. Okay. So am I better on a keto diet while dumping oxalates? No, not necessarily. So PJ wants to know, is there a reliable or honest place where I can find the basic nutrient content of fruit and veggie foods, one that shows which foods contains the most beneficial vitamins and minerals? There are lots of places, PJ. I mean, probably the easiest and the best thing to do is buy yourself a nutrition almanac that, it contains information from multiple databases across the world about the nutritional value and content of different foods. But what you have to understand is none of these books and none of these resources are going to be 100% accurate 100% of the time, because the way the food is farmed today, the nutrient quality, really honestly it's based on the soil, it's based on the region that it's grown in. So like if we take, for example, a Florida orange versus a Texas orange, are they going to be exactly the same? No, they're probably not. And there are a number of factors with weather and with bugs and insects and other variables that might alter or change the nature of the nutritional density of that fruit. And so no one book or no one resource is going to be the end-all be-all resource for you to follow. So you kind of got to keep that in mind. An almanac is kind of a generalization of knowledge collected over time, but it's not going to be a definitive Bible, if you will, of exacts. Let's see here. How do you test for delayed response? Several ways, but there's 6 different types of delayed reactions. A lot of doctors will just test the IgG, but that's an inaccurate and incomplete way to test for delayed hypersensitivity. So another question coming in about timing on probiotics. That's a big question tonight. Again, the timing is not really all that relevant. If you're going to really maximize your probiotic, in my opinion, you take it at night before you go to bed, and you give that bacteria time to get into your GI tract and colonize while you're asleep, and not influencing it with any other potential medications or other things you might be being exposed to. Okay. Is it realistic to not consume grains again? Sure it is. I haven't consumed grains in 20 years, Isaiah. And I feel like I'm pretty fit and pretty healthy. And I see it in my clinic. For 20 years, I've seen it. People becoming more fit and more healthy, not eating grains. So I think to answer that question, it's very realistic. I think the bigger question is, can you wrap your mind around the possibility that it's realistic for you? Maybe even a better question than that would be, is it the right move for you to make? I mean, the first step in understanding whether you should or shouldn't eat grains is really to get tested for gluten sensitivity. Wilton wants to know, why can't I get the products in the UK? Wilton, we don't have a distributorship in the UK. If you know somebody who wants to become a distributor, we're happy to entertain a conversation with them. You can't get our supplements in the UK unless you want to pay. It's a pretty hefty shipping price. But what you can get is you can get genetic testing. You can get DNA testing in any country in the world. That actually can be shipped globally. But the supplements, the cost of shipping can become a barrier for many people. Is it okay to drink water all day on a low-carb diet, or do we need electrolytes? Well, yeah, you also need electrolytes. If your water is reverse osmosis filtered, you definitely want to add a source of electrolytes, and we could actually add, I would add ultra electrolytes to this list, as a supplement, rich in trace minerals and electrolytes, because again, one of the things that oxalates likes to do is it likes to bind up your minerals. And so this is one of the reasons why somebody asked the question earlier, can oxalates create muscle weakness? Can they create muscle fatigue and cramping? And that they absolutely can. And this is one of the reasons why they bind to your electrolytes, and it can create a problem. So if you're drinking a lot of water, especially if it's filtered with reverse osmosis, which is the best filter, by the way, if you live in the city, because I'd rather see you filter out all the toxic chemicals, compounds with RO, and add electrolytes back to the water than drink city water, which is full. In the Houston area where I live, there's 42 prescription medications that we can identify in the drinking water. And your town is probably no different, because so many people abuse their bodies and don't make the right decisions. And so they're on multiple medications, and then they're poisoning our drinking water as a result of flushing old drugs down the toilet, as a result of urinating out unmetabolized drugs. And that stuff ends up in our groundwater, which is then recirculated back into your drinking water. So it's very critical that you filter your drinking water if you live in the city. Now, if you're on your own well, not so much. If you're drinking well water, it probably has enough total dissolved solids in it, which is going to be more rich in electrolytes and other ground-based minerals. So you don't have to worry so much about adding electrolytes back to like a well water source. Okay. Man, questions just keep coming, but I think we're out of time. Wow, I think I've gone way over here. So, I got caught away. So, thanks for joining us this Monday evening. I hope this was helpful for you. Hey, make sure you come over and visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. If you're not subscribed already, get subscribed. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, get subscribed. Look, the more areas you have to connect with us, the more we can ensure that our information makes it into your inbox, makes it into your notifications. Remember, folks like me today, we're highly, highly being censored. So the more ways you have to communicate with me, the less ways the less potential that my information is going to be censored from ending up in your inbox. So just make sure you go and connect with me through my different channels and platforms so that you can keep getting this great information on a weekly basis. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you next Monday night for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Take care. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.